This is not in any way to cast aspersions on conjuring. As some second-class activity, I'm a great fan. Rather, I make the distinction to concentrate on forms of magic that claim the seriousness of science and the metaphysical aspirations of religion, claims that should not be dismissed but rather subject to serious scrutiny. Magical practices take many forms, so let us gain an initial sense of what magic can involve through some concrete instances. Once upon a time, many years ago, I carried out an archaeological excavation of a cave called Matakupkin, on the island of New Ireland in Papua New Guinea. Matakupkin turned out to have evidence of human occupation 35,000 years ago, including indications of some of the earliest seafaring in the world. I lived in a village called Hilalon, which is one of a series of coastal villages facing the Pacific Ocean. I went walking with people from the village one day, as I was interested in older village sites where people had lived before the colonial era, but were now abandoned. On the way back to Hilalon, in the late afternoon, people said they wanted to show me something interesting, but they wouldn't say what. Intrigued, I followed them off our direct path back to the coast, and after half an hour we found ourselves in a glade in a rainforest, where there was a slight depression covered by grass. The place had an unusual feel, a natural break in the trees and much hotter than the shade of the forest. My friend showed me stones lying in the grass, which looked like small stalagmites, many pointed at one end, composed of a creamy material. I'm not quite sure how they were formed or how they got to this particular spot. One older man proceeded to tell me about the stones, saying that on certain occasions the stones could fly around above the ground, and anyone near them had to be careful, as they were fast and dangerous and could injure you. However, those with the right knowledge can look at the motion of the stones and tell the future from them. I was excited by this possibility and said I'd love to see them move. No, my friends replied. They don't do it if white people are around. I encountered various other stories over the years in New Guinea, stones that you could put both hands on and think about a distant place and then find yourself there. Ever adaptable, the New Guineans have invented forms of sorcery that are useful in the contemporary world. For example, how to make yourself invisible in order to rob a bank, which involves putting the bones of a black cat in your hair, told with lots of laughter and questions to me as to whether it might really work. Sorcery to get your kids into university or high school is taken more seriously. But people were less forthcoming about that. Sorcery and magic are common in Papua New Guinea, and they require skills to read the world in the right way, whether this be understanding the movement of the stones or developing magical actions that work in the village, or furthering the emerging middle-class aspirations of some town dwellers. One of the most famous accounts of magic by a Westerner is that by anthropologist E. Evans Pritchard, who worked in the 1930s with the Azande, a farming people who lived between South Sudan and the Democratic Republic of the Congo and the Central African Republic. In writing Witchcraft, Oracles and Magic Among the Azande, Evans Pritchard made the point that magic and witchcraft were not irrational, but allowed for rational argument based on different premises than those common in the Western intellectual tradition. For the Azande, all misfortune and death had a human cause through witchcraft and magic, and the origins of specific instances of accident or death needed to be sought in human motives and politics. Dual modes of causality were accepted. If the granary fell on someone sitting in shade and killed them, it was accepted that the ultimate cause of the granary's collapse was that ants had eaten through its wooden supports. However, the real question was, why had it fallen at that exact moment when someone was sitting under it? A regular answer